Sometimes a thrift store find really gets me excited, and this is a perfect example of that. I mean, look at these welds. When I found this bike that's obviously been painted black, the only thing I could think of was Ritchie's Super Comp. As I got looking at it, one, it's missing what would be Ritchie bull moose bars, but at the time I was thinking maybe someone swapped out the bull moose bars for something different. Because this frame, it exemplifies that hand-built craftsmanship that you see on fillet brazed bikes. It's just a beautiful example of that, hidden under this nasty paint job. I just had to bring this home. Once I had it home, after a quick look at the serial number and looking things up online, I discovered that this was a Novara Ponderosa, a 1988 Novara Ponderosa at that. And these first Novara Ponderosas were actually made by Ibis bicycles, which I thought was pretty cool. Ibis was coming out with some really neat custom bikes in the 80s that they were building, and the Ibis Avion bike was essentially the same bike as this Novara Ponderosa. They were sold at REI, and they were great bikes. So with that in mind, I wanted to do a restoration on this bike and return it through paint to its father's family, you could say. So after cleaning it up, working on clearing off this nasty black paint, one, you can see the original green and pink paint job. Clearing off the stem. It was time for primer. And paint. Now a lot of you ask how I make my stickers, and I make them using a Cricut Maker vinyl cutter. And for this one I'm doing a couple of layers. First one of white that I'm masking off here, and then for the logo and the head badge I'm doing kind of a 3D look with a black shadow behind it. And I do that second to get the colors right. And it's masked over top of the other masks. Then it was time for a fade paint job. Fade was one of the common things done on these 80 Ibis mountain bikes. And so I wanted to mimic that. One, I think it looks awesome. And two, I hadn't tried a fade yet with the spray.bike paint. And I thought it was a good opportunity to give that a try. It took a little bit of back and forth with both colors, but I feel like it ended up really good. I quite love it. And this is always one of my favorite parts, the reveal of the masking. I then did 3 coats of clear. This is just the first little bit. You need to wait 2 hours between each coat of clear. So it took me most of the night, that night, to finish off that paint job. It was then on to cleaning up all these parts. Since this bike was mostly original, all of the components really were original. The only thing on it that wasn't, I think, were the grips and the extra gel padding on the seat. The seat also was underneath that padding, had no padding left on it. So my goal was to keep this as original as I could while putting on the new parts that were needed. And these parts needed a lot of cleaning. With the cranks also, I sanded them down starting with 220 grit and went all the way up to a 3000 grit before buffing them here to get a mirror polish as best I could. I did the same to the brake levers. Now with the pedals, the cages around the pedals were a little beat up. I wanted to make them fit with the color scheme of the bike a little better. I believe these are original pedals. I cleaned up the internals, the aluminum, then sanded up kind of the rough spots on the pedals themselves, and then gave them a coat of primer and white paint, using the spray.bike paint again also. Now these old Dior thumb shifters, the mounting bracket was a little bent and needed a bit of straightening before I finished the cleanup and put them back together. For the wheels, really to do what I wanted to do, to clean them up, clean up the spokes, the rims, and the hubs, it meant taking them completely apart. I also wanted to rework the hubs. The rear wasn't too bad. it turned okay, the bearings felt good, but the front was not as good. So both wheels I totally disassembled, took apart the hubs, polished them, cleaned them, repacked the bearings, and rebuilt the wheels. Now it's time for my favorite part, the assembly. After cleaning up everything, putting everything together is one of my favorite parts of my bike restorations. It took a long time to get all these parts cleaned, to get the frame painted. It was a good probably 30 hours just to get it to this point without even doing the build. And that doesn't include designing the graphics myself, laying them out and printing them on the Cricut, which probably added another 4 hours or so. It's a lot of work. Mind you, that does include filming and recording, which I know adds extra time to the build. But once all that's done, it's maybe only an hour or two to do the full assembly again. And to see it all come together is just, for me, it's really satisfying. This is my first time using the Paneracer Dart and Smoke tire combinations, really since the 90s. These are still really great tires. They're still available. I'll put a link to them in the description below. They're really quite good tires, and you can get them for a good deal. They went on great, and they really add to that classic look. Even though these are probably from the 90s, the bike's from the late 80s, 1988. They're totally appropriate, in my mind, for this build. And with that, this bike is done. I think it turned out great. I really love the paint from spray.bike. I'd like to thank them again. It's a great product that is so easy to use. Doing the fade was really kind of cool and actually a lot easier than I thought it would be. The bike, I feel like it turned out beautiful. It really has that look of an Ibis bike from the 80s. I love the stem, the simplicity of it, the beauty of the fade. I like the smoke and the dark tires. This thing just turned out great. From a $15 find at the thrift store to a fully restored bike with just putting new tires, cables, shifters, grips, and a seat. It's an incredible restoration. Mind you, several hours of labor, but it's a beautiful bike. I feel like it was well worth it. So, look for opportunities to give those old things new life. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this with friends during this time where you have a little extra time at home, like I do. No scouts, no activities, quarantined at home probably like everyone else. It's a good chance to do those restorations. So, I'll see you on the next video. Ciao.